Sandra, do you approve? You approve? Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so this patio area has been dug up. You can see it's about 5 inches deep, more or less, and that's gonna allow us for our concrete pad. It's gonna be hand mixed because we have terrible access here and there. We could run a concrete truck with the pump and all that out here, but I just don't think it's that necessary. This concrete doesn't need to be beautiful because we are covering it up with a flagstone, which I have here. And of course, I've already forgotten the name, so I'll just type it in somewhere here. But it's kind of this whitish color, which will be beautiful. We're going for this Napa vibe in this backyard. It's very much a craftsman home, but we're gonna add some Napa-esque vibes. And one of the features I'm super excited about is our water feature. At first, I was just gonna do a little bubbler with a big rock, a boulder in the corner there. But again, our access is terrible. We have steps on this side and we have no bobcat access. So getting a big feature in here would be really hard. Craning something in would have to go all the way over the house. And you'll also see we have electrical lines all over the place. So the solution is to do a pondless water feature. We're gonna add it in this corner right over here. We're gonna save a few buckets of this, a few wheelbarrows full of the soil that we have here. And then we're also gonna excavate a bunch as well that we're going to put in our blocks. And then we're gonna build up this water feature and it's gonna spill at least in one way, maybe two. We're gonna figure that out as we go. And so that's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna sound amazing. And so you'll be able to see it from the main patio space, which is now behind me. We have this beautiful fence, I love it, but it is a big fence that wraps around the whole property. So in this area, straight off of the deck, we're gonna raise it up a step, fill it with gravel, and then we're gonna have a centerpiece green wall, which is gonna break up this big fence line, and it's gonna allow for like a visual right off the back of the house. So concrete is being hand mixed and poured back here. It doesn't need to be beautiful because we're gonna cover this with flagstone. You can see there's a little bit of a relief right here. This is where the stone's gonna sit flush with the deck. It will also have some room for the grout. The one side is gonna be bordered by the bench, and then we have that side that'll just fill in as we go, and then we have a regular concrete wall. So this is our silver quartzite, and they're all less than an inch thick because they veneer easily on the concrete patio. Each of them are being cut and to fit into the space just perfectly. We'll have nice tight grout lines. You can also just loosely spread flagstone and veneer it on concrete. Your gaps would be a lot bigger. This is a different look. It's a more high-end look because, well, it costs more money to take the time to hand cut it, but it looks great. So right now they're filling the inside of the cells with concrete. We have our screws for our bench that will sit in there, the supports. I am so excited about this stucco color. I had to go to like 3 different places. Well, that's a lie. I called 3 different places and then I sent Santiago to go get it. And this is called Coral Gable. And I really just love how it has the grays, but it also has browns in it. It's still drying, so I expect it to lighten just a little bit, but I like how it complements the silver quartz flagstone, which is this nice white. I think it goes well with the existing deck. You can see the start of our wood bench here. We're gonna use 2x6s by 8 feet boards, and we have a stain on this. This is Padre Brown. Yeah, semi-transparent. And we're gonna face this here. We're gonna have it come over by 1.5 inches on the edge. And then this is where we're gonna put another 2x4, and that's gonna cover my 4x4s here and give us a nice clean edge. I'll also add lights that are gonna shine down like here, here, and here. And that's gonna give us a nice soft glow underneath the bench to kind of define this area at night. It's gonna look great. Another thing we wanna consider is because I'm using 8-foot boards, we could get 16. Wood's so expensive right now, and for trying to fit a 16-foot board in my truck is hard. So we're gonna do 8s, and we're gonna stagger the joints. So instead of having them all cut here, we're gonna run some long, and the middle one will end here, or vice versa. So that will kind of just space them out a little bit. So big changes today on this job site. One of the homeowners had been out of town for a while, and when she came home, she's like, you know, I don't know if I love how the platform turned out. It ended up being a little bit taller because we had to add this cap. And so I definitely can see. So basically we're going to pull out the papers that we have. But I completely agree. Both of us thought, you know what, why didn't we think about doing this initially out of stone? So what we're going to do is we are going to have to do a change order because it's different than what we originally decided to do. But I'm going to work with her on the cost. So we're going to pull out what we have. We're going to bring in some more boulders and we're going to rework this a little bit. The reason I raised this whole thing up and filled it with gravel is because this tree right here has roots that come into this area. Initially, the client wanted to have concrete, but because most of these roots are under this area and the tree is already leaning, I thought that it would eventually crack the concrete and maybe be a little obtrusive for the tree. So I ended up just bringing it up with gravel. We're not compacting it or anything. It'll naturally just kind of settle. So that will still allow moisture and water to travel all the way down. So the tree roots over here are still going to get a good amount of water, and then we'll just top it off to get this look, but we still get the raised effect in this area. All right, Bill, what are we doing?
This is going to be really, really cool. What we're going to do, we're going to start right here at the top.
Okay.
With about a 2-foot spillway.
Yep.
It's going to drop down maybe 12, 14 inches.
Nice.
Then we're going to hit a stone in the middle and split around it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we're going to come around this thing with some more drops of waterfall.
Okay.
Here, and then cut back in and disappear right in here.
Awesome. That's great. And now, so you're saying it won't be an issue if I try and do my pathway intersecting, because I don't want to force too many things. I want the water feature.
Area, since there's nothing here, big flagstone to walk on.
Got it.
Go right under it and the water disappears underneath the flagstone.
Got it. So awesome. We'll be covering the basin somewhat with it then. We won't even see.
The basin will be completely gone.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Alex, awesome. Okay, but what is this going on right here?
Well, basically, that's where our pump and our autoclave is going to be in that.
Okay.
It's all going to be encapsulated in the rubber.
Wait. So this is the aqua blocks, and does the rubber go around it?
Yes, the rubber goes underneath there.
Okay.
Basically, the main reason for these is to hold the volume open when it's out of water. If we just use the rubber bag, it'll crush. There's nothing holding it in shape.
But if we just did the liner, then it would be an open pond.
Yes.
Got it. So in order to have an enclosed pondless feature,
we got to hold all the water when it's turned off.
So that way I could put my stone on here and stuff like that. Got it. Now, why wouldn't you just use like a recirculating fountain basin? Because it's not enough water?
For the main reason, plus that way we don't have the sitting water. So you have no algae.
Got it. But if they turned it off and went on vacation, it would fill in here.
It stays full.
It stays here, and then when they turn it back on.
Yes.
Wait a minute. So you actually turn your pond off during the day?
It's not a pond.
Sorry, your pondless. Turn
Mine's
it
off during the day because of our heat here. That way the sun burns all the algae that would grow.
Wait a minute. That's crazy. Okay, so because there's no water running, the algae's there, and it can't survive.
Exactly.
Good morning. No makeup Mondays, just kidding. It's not Monday, but I'm not wearing makeup and I look tired, but it's okay. Because I have plants. I have so many plants. Look at them. Aren't they beautiful? So I had to make a ton of substitutions, but I'm pretty happy with what I got. What I initially wanted was a bunch of blue fescue. They didn't have them in 1 gallon, so I got them in a flat instead, but you know, the flats, you know, I can get 16 plants more or less out of this, and these will grow in fairly fast. So I did find these lomandras that actually look like blue fescue. These guys right here, but they get like 2 to 3 feet, but they kind of pull in the same texture, which I think will be nice to have like 2 different scales of the same kind of color. And then I got some ground cover, which is Scottish moss. I'd like to plant this around the steps. And then I have this. I was thinking I'd plant in between. This is called Creeping Jenny. I was thinking I'd plant this in between the rocks that we have recently changed. I bought a few more plants than we need, as usual, because I want to make sure I fit them in. It gives me more opportunity. It does make me take another trip back to return things. I think I actually need like one more pop of color. I have a lot of whites. I love using whites because they're so neutral. They're lovely. So I have my white jasmine, I have a white scaevola, and I have these yarrow that are a white with a hint of pink, and then I have these irises, which will be purple, our little ollies, and then I have some ferns because it is quite shaded back there. So I'm excited to drop these off, and I'll start placing them, and then I'll see what I'm missing when we come back for planting tomorrow. All right, so today's planting day. We are putting up our green wall. Shane is painting the posts. We're basically making the pressure treated look a little bit darker. It makes it look a little nicer. Ryan is bringing in the flagstone. He's like, hey, should I break this? I'm like, no, I want the big pieces. Don't break it. Well, we're just dry laying them out to see if we like the layout. I love the idea for the path. The client wants to see it. So let's see, who do you think is gonna win this one? Are we gonna have a path or not a path? That's not a win or lose thing, really, honestly. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the client's preference. So I think the path will look nice, and especially when we put all the plants around it. Their thought is that they have a lot of hardscape, which they do, and that they want more garden space. So we'll see. Honestly, I might decide I don't want it either after I lay it out, or after Ryan lays it out, and he's gonna be like, really, you made me carry all of these out here? All right, so Ryan is placing our Trachelospermum jasminioides. It's a star jasmine. They do great in sun, they do great in shade, really like part shade. Deep shade, they get pretty sparse. So if you get a few hours of sun, that's awesome. You'll see they have these really cool white flowers that smell amazing. It's really awesome when you put these, like this whole yard's gonna just smell like wonderful when they're in bloom, and they'll get completely covered with white flowers, and then when they're not covered, they have this really pretty glossy green foliage. And as of now, like these things will spread a lot. They'll spread like 25 feet if you let them. However, they really need a structure because they're not very strong. They'll go far and long, but they have like no muscles. So they need to be attached to something like this trellis. So this will completely cover this, but once we get over here, it's just gonna flop. So if we want this to connect someday, then we need to either run something to connect them, or we just keep these as like individual pieces here. And I have 1, 2, 3 there. So potentially we could completely cover this whole wall if they chose to by extending like the wiring, or we keep them as accent like points, I guess you could say. So it's time to start putting up the wall. As you can see, Shane's putting up our 2x4 pressure treated, what's holding the weight, and just, I mean, we could just attach them, but we're putting in these cleats more or less underneath, and then we're attaching that to the 4x4, screwing that in. That's just gonna help distribute the weight. Because these planting pockets are quite heavy, I wanna just add that extra support. And we're gonna run those along the top. Of course, you could have just run the 2x4 along the front of all 4 of these 4x4s, but because we're kind of in a limited space patio, I wanted as much space as we can. So even that 1.5 inches, I decided to cut them and make them flush with the 4x4s to give us a little more space. So these are what we're using to cleat them in. And then these are our planting pockets. If I remember correctly, they're 112 inches. These are made out of recycled plastic, which is pretty cool. And basically it's just like this big opening here, and you fill it with soil. We're gonna run irrigation to it. One thing to note is that it's all lined on the inside, which is great, so it doesn't drip. But you got to be careful with the irrigation. Make sure that we don't do too much or too little. I want to go with ferns and kind of overall like a monochromatic green color, just to create a nice relaxing back area. We could have done succulents, but because the sun in this spot, we only get like a peak of the sun for maybe an hour or 2 at most. I think the ferns would actually do really, really nice and look really pretty as our backdrop. And we got one up. Put the grommets in. Now we got to work our way down. So I just want to play around with some different plants in here. See what, some are going to like this environment better than others. So by having a variety of different ones, if I see some really thrive and some really don't, then I can just kind of edit it as it goes. Odd numbers are good. I want to bring in some more ferns, so I'm gonna just need to buy a lot more plants in general. But what I have is my bacopa. This is going to do a nice cascading of white, and then I have my scribola. This is also going to cascade some white. So I need some more uprights. This heuchera right here will have pink flowers, and this is going to shoot flowers upright, which is important because I want things going up and down. So this is down, down, up, up, up for Society Garlet. I need to get some more of those. Yeah, I'm just placing them in their containers to show the client like what I'm thinking about doing. And then I need to come in, add soil. I'll probably add it like halfway through, and then I'll take them out and actually plant them in that soil. So the containers will go, because you never want to have your plants with a bunch of wet feet. So there's a plastic liner on the bottom here, so that prevents it from dripping down, especially if this was like on a concrete patio or somewhere that would matter. that would be important. Here it's not so important. But yeah, they're not supposed to drip from above. They're supposed to wick the water up, which is important to keep the plants healthy. So if you've been following this project along, you probably saw that we built this out of paver blocks, just big old square blocks. It was about this tall or so, and when one of the homeowners came back from vacation, she's like, it's so boxy. And I kind of agreed with her, and after discussing, we both talked about using the Cresta rubble boulders to retain instead for a more natural kind of Napa-style feel in this yard. Overall, this nice blue color ties really nice with the existing deck that they had. We ended up cutting their deck over here back about 4 or 5 boards to create a nice big enough pad here. That ended up being a little bit bigger of a task than we thought based on how it was built, but that's okay. And so I thought it was important because I didn't want to have so much hardscape that we have the deck end have a little bit of a planter to soften this. The natural boulders look great, and then we just used a tiny 1/4 inch gravel, and I think it gives it a really nice finished look. I like the white color because again it brightens this area. We have all these dark walls around us. I think the white really kind of balances and picks up on the green wall and some of the other features. So you'll notice we have a lot of grays, like blue grays. We'll have whites in this yard, and then a few pops of color here and there, but overall it's very relaxing. It's very neutral. There's nothing super distracting. So this whole area here was just open dirt. We decided this would be the best area for a dining table. The client is an interior designer, so she's going to come through and style this. I'll make sure to get photos after she's done. But we ended up using this white stone. I think it's called silver quartzite, and got that at Southwest Boulder. But what I'm really excited about is this stucco, and I know you guys can barely see it, but gosh darn it, I love it. It's like this kind of beigey gray, which is a really hard color to get. I called 2 places to find it, had to go to one place to pay for it and another place to pick it up, so I had one of the guys go pick it up. This goes up into our bench, and it's hard to see here, but we have landscape lights under the bench, so at night this lights up and it has a very soft glow onto the patio, and that does 2 things. 1, aesthetically it's beautiful, but 2, you know there's a bench here, so if it's dark you're not going to jam your knees into this thing. We used Padre Brown for this color. This is 2 coats, and this is a cedar. It's a little darker than I like the first coat we put on, we wiped off, but because of all like the edits when we put it together, it needed some sanding down, so we added another coat on. It's gonna wear down over the years pretty evenly, so we'll just kind of, it'll kind of go between light brown and darker brown whenever it gets stained again. But overall, I like the color. So in the design, we had put a pathway to kind of transect this garden area. I was gonna have just a standard stone that recirculated water. We changed and ended up doing a pondless water feature, which I'm really excited about. I think it really serves this yard well. And the client wasn't sure if they still wanted the path going through, and I was like, no, just wait. Like, I think the path is going to be really important, because they're like, let's just have it all plants. But without the path, you can't really interact with the water feature as much. So I insisted that I at least lay it down for them and let them know what they think. We laid it out. They loved it. So we decided to keep it. And I like it because you can totally walk right over this feature. If there's kids here, it's easier to access without them running over fragile plants like our hydrangeas and stuff like that. Again, we have these Scottish moss going through. My goal is that this is going to completely grow in and give us this nice chartreuse punch. The stone, again, is like this light kind of whitish gray that ties in with everything else. And you'll notice most of the other plants in this yard are kind of this gray blue, and then we have some chartreuses. And when we do have flowers, they're kind of in the soft purple coloring, like our Lorope right here, which just flowers a few times a year. I usually plant it for foliage. After we finished the feature, I thought that the pond kind of stuck out a little too much, and as the plants grow in, it will soften it. But I also decided that we should add a few accent boulders just so it's not like one giant thing of rocks and then garden. So kind of intersecting the spaces by putting some boulders in makes it feel a little bit more natural. I'm a little bit bummed because we're doing our show and tell and my Russian sage is not flowering, but these have these beautiful, very soft purple plumes, and they just really, they do a lot for this space. There's only 2 of them, one on each side because it is a small garden. It's beautiful. So for the water feature, we also use these Cresta boulders. We have some big accent ones where it kind of turns. I had Bill go ahead and build this for us. with it kind of streaming down this way. It's really relaxing. We're super happy with how it came out. I like it that we can kind of like walk across. Of course, we could have done a more formal bridge, but it's a small yard. If we did a bridge, we'd be covering a lot of it. Plus, as the plants grow in, they're going to soften it. But I think my favorite feature with this Pondless is if they go on vacation or they just need it to be very quiet, you can literally turn it off.